Have you chosen your wedding transport? No? Then let's have a look at it. Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. My name's Donna and this is Bride to Be TV, the place to be if you want to plan your wedding and find out where to save money and where you should spend it. This week we are talking all about transport. Now, there are three options generally when it comes to transport. You can have none at all, you can have one or two bits, or you can go the full hog. Now, this will really depend on what your budget is and where you want to spend your budget. So this is a great place if you want to find a space in your wedding budget to save money. Transportation is the ideal place where you can cut transport out. So for instance, if you have your ceremony and your wedding breakfast and your evening do all in the same place, you're not going to need any transportation at all if you don't want. And what I mean by this is, usually in these wedding venues, there is somewhere for the bride to stay overnight, and you won't need to leave the venue to come back to it in any kind of vehicle. So you don't need to arrive at the venue with transport, and generally you will then spend that night at that same place, so you won't need any transport to take you away. So therefore you eliminate all the transportation costs that you would usually have. So therefore you've got more money to spend on the entertainment or the food, having extra guests. So it's a great option to go for, having your whole ceremony through to the evening in the same place, and then you don't have to have any transport. However, if you do want to have some transport, you can still get away with just arriving to the venue if you have it all in the same place, but you want to stay at home, for instance, and get ready at your parents' house as a hark back to your childhood, which can be fantastic for photos because mum and dad have usually got pictures of you up when you were little, and those can make some great photos for your photographer. So getting ready at home can sometimes be the option you want, and then you'll need a vehicle to get you to and from the venue. Again, you could still have everything in the same place, so you'll only need that one journey to account for. And if you have that one journey, that's going to be less than having that journey plus another journey plus something at the end of the night. So you can either arrange taxis to get you home, or you can choose something else in the wedding car or wedding transport range to get you home. But it depends on what you want to do at the end of the night, whether you want to send off or whether you want to stay until all your guests go home. The other option is to have your ceremony and your wedding reception in different places, which means that not only will you need transportation to the ceremony, you'll also need transportation from the ceremony to the reception, and then you'll need transportation from the reception, if you're not staying there, back to wherever it is you're staying that first night. So there's a lot of movement within transport. There's a lot of places where things can get missed, and often it's that last one of the evening that gets missed. If you're not staying on site that night, it is often the thing that gets forgotten, your transport to your first night hotel or back home, wherever it is that you're going. So I'm going to have a handy dandy checklist for you, and I'll put the link in the description below so you can head over, and it will go through the options for transportation. It will go through the system of where you would need transportation, and you can check off that list. It'll also give you some questions to ask the transportation service provider so that you know that you're getting the right transportation for you. So if you decide to have it all in one area so you can save on transportation, then you're good to go. You've got your money, you can go and put it in another area. You don't need to listen to the rest of this video. However, if you do want some transportation, then I have got some ideas you might want to consider. When you are looking at wedding transport, the go-to is usually a vintage wedding car or a horse and carriage. Now, you can choose transportation that fits in with your venue and with your theme. There are lots of different people providing lots of different types of transport, and you don't have to go with that tradition. Now, if you are a princess and you want your princess day, then a horse and carriage may well be what you want. Things to consider when choosing a horse and carriage is working with animals is unpredictable. Working with an open top carriage can also be unpredictable, especially in the UK with our weather. So you want to look at what they have for alternate options if it's forecasting rain on your day. Do they have a covered carriage that you could use instead? Also, you have to think about how far you're having the horses travel and where they're travelling. So sometimes there is issues with steep hills. We have one in our town. The church is on a very steep hill. Horses and carriages can't work with that kind of steepness. So you need to look at where you're going to get married if you really desire a horse and carriage. And it may be that you want to talk to the horse and carriage supplier and what the horses can and can't do before you go and choose where you're getting married before you book that, because otherwise you might miss out on that option. If you want a vintage wedding car, if you're having a vintage themed wedding, that might work really well. But you may be having a very glamorous, elegant affair in which a high-end modern car might work better. So something like a Rolls Royce might work really well in a modern, classic, elegant wedding. Other options you could look at is look at where you're getting married. If you're getting married near water, you might want to consider arriving on a boat or a seaplane. You might think about coming in on an air balloon or a helicopter. All of these are options. If you're not having any form of traditional transport on your day, if you are having your whole wedding in the same venue, you may want to look at something like a rickshaw, and having that, you and your bride and groom can go off and have your portraits taken, and you can take the rickshaw off down the road, wherever it is that you're planning on having them taken, if it's on site somewhere, and then driving that back, and that can be something quite quirky and fun. Something else you might want to consider is vintage engines, fire engines, steam engines, tractors. All of these vehicles can be adapted, and you will find that there are people out there that will supply them. So if you want something that's really unique, then this may be an option for you. One thing to remember is if you're planning on having transport take you to the venue, your guests aren't generally going to see that piece of transportation. Usually everybody's already in the church or in the ceremony sat down waiting for the bride and groom. So if you are only travelling from your home to the ceremony and then later on in the evening leaving, you may want to just decide to choose a taxi firm that can hold your dress, or get a family member to drive you to the ceremony to save the money. And it depends on your budget. You may want a fancy car regardless, as it is your wedding day and it's one of the only times you do choose fancy cars, so you might want it anyway. But if your budget is tight, the option is there. Nobody sees you arrive anyway, so you don't need to be in a fancy car. Obviously, I have spoken before in my wedding budget planner video, which I will link up here somewhere, that you will have 3 non-negotiable areas and 3 negotiable areas on your wedding day. And it may be that transportation is a non-negotiable for you, in which case, have at it. You go and find the piece of transport you want, make a big thing of it, have people outside when you arrive so they can see it, or have it that it stays around so that after the ceremony you can come out and have pictures taken with it, so that you make a bit of a thing about it. If it is one of your negotiable areas, then like I say, this might be the area where you say, actually, let's find a venue where we can have everything on site, make sure that there are rooms available and we'll stay, and then we don't have to worry about any form of transportation at all. Or it might be something that you think about and decide whether you want it or not at a later point in the process, when you've got other things like your non-negotiables locked down, so you know what you're looking at with your budget. Don't forget to head down into the description to get that link to download your transport checklist. It will help you decide whether you want any transport, what kind of transport you might think about having, and then questions to ask your transport provider so you know what you're getting for your money. And also, if you want to subscribe, that really helps. And if you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up. And I will see you next week. Bye for now.